Welcome back. Tonight's story is about a county recorder in Allentown who watched her father quietly hand the family restaurant to her brother the day after her mother's stroke, and the one backdated line on page 2 that ended everything. Pour the coffee. Stay close. My father stole my mother's restaurant in a hospital parking lot. 3 weeks later, I voided the deed myself. My name is Eleanor Marie Vance. I am 43 years old. I live alone in a small brick house off Tilghman Street in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and for the last 9 years, I have supervised the deed processing department at the county recorder's office. I have read more than 200,000 transfer documents in my career, and I can tell you when a notary stamp is wrong from across a desk. The morning the file came across my screen, I had a cup of black coffee going cold next to my keyboard and a thin gray rain coming down on the parking lot outside. The clock on the wall read 9:14 a.m. My brother's name was on line 3. My father's signature was on line 9. And the notary commission number, stamped in pale blue ink at the bottom, was a number I knew did not exist in October of last year because I was the one who processed that notary's commission paperwork the following month. My hand went very still on the mouse. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I just sat there and read the date again. Some part of me had been waiting for this piece of paper my whole adult life. I just did not know it would arrive on a Tuesday. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from tonight. I want to know who is with me on this one. I grew up above the restaurant. Vance Family Kitchen, corner of 6th and Liberty, 2 blocks from the old silk mill. My mother named it. My mother built it. My mother stood on a wooden crate behind the counter in 1986 and rolled gnocchi by hand while my father did the books in a back office that smelled like cigarette smoke and printer toner. The dining room had 12 tables, red vinyl chairs, a tin ceiling she had repainted herself one weekend in August, and a small framed photograph of her own mother in a kerchief hanging next to the register. That photograph never moved in 37 years. Not once. From the outside, we looked like one of those families people point to when they want to feel hopeful about America. Immigrant grandparents, a daughter who made good, a husband at her side, 2 kids in matching aprons after school. The local paper did a write-up on us in 1994. My mother kept the clipping in a drawer under the register, folded so the crease ran straight through her own smile. The truth was quieter and meaner. My father, Raymond Vance, was the kind of man who believed sons were the future and daughters were the help. He never said it like that. He said it the way men of his generation said most cruel things, through small daily corrections. My brother Michael got the front of the house. I got the dish pit. Michael got the keys at 16. I got a curfew at 20. Michael got told he had a head for business. I got told I was lucky to be smart enough to keep up. My mother heard every word of it and said nothing, because she was tired, and because she came from a country where a woman did not contradict her husband in front of the children. She squeezed my hand under the table instead. That was her language. A squeeze under the table, and a plate of ravioli in my room when I had been crying. I remember 2 warning signs more clearly than the rest. I was 12. We were sitting at the kitchen counter upstairs, eating leftover bread, and my father told me, with a small, proud smile, that the restaurant would go to Michael one day because Michael had the temperament. I asked what my temperament was. He said, "You are sensitive. You feel things. You will marry someone who can take care of you." My mother set down her coffee cup so hard the saucer rang. She did not look at him. She looked at me and she mouthed the word, "No." Just that. No. The second warning came when I was 19. I had just been accepted into a paralegal program at the community college. My father read the acceptance letter at the dinner table, set it down next to his plate, and said, "That is a nice little hobby." Michael laughed. My mother did not. She got up, walked into the back office, and came out 10 minutes later with an envelope of cash she had been saving in a coffee tin behind the dry goods. She pressed it into my hand at the door and said, in her thick, careful English, "This is yours. You go. You finish. You come back smart. You hear me, Ellie? You come back smart." I did not know it then, but the woman who could barely write a check in English had already understood, 20 years before it happened, exactly what my father was going to try. That envelope of cash is the reason I am telling you this story tonight. In April of last year, my mother had a stroke. She was 68 years old. She had just finished prepping the Sunday gravy. She set down the wooden spoon, sat on the stool by the stove, and said, in Italian, "The kitchen is spinning." Then she was on the floor. The ambulance took her at 3:47 p.m. I know the time because I have the call log. My father called me from the hospital at 6:12 p.m. He sounded almost rehearsed. He said the doctors were saying the next 48 hours were the most important. He said Michael was already on his way down from Reading. He said, "Ellie, we need to keep the family calm. We need to keep the business steady. We cannot let anything slip while your mother fights." I drove to the hospital with a thermos of coffee on the passenger seat and a knot in my chest I could not name. By the time I got there, my father and my brother were standing in the hallway outside the ICU, and they stopped talking when they saw me. Not the small natural stop of people surprised by a sister. The other kind. The kind where the air in a hallway goes thin. My mother lived. She could not speak for 3 days. She could not sign her name for 3 weeks. And during those 3 weeks, while I sat in a vinyl chair by her bed reading her the Sunday paper out loud, my father drove to a strip mall in Bethlehem and did business with a notary public named Daniel R. Schaefer, commission number 1349221, issued by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania on October 17th of that year. The deed he signed transferred Vance family kitchen, the land, the building, the liquor license, and the goodwill into the sole name of Michael Anthony Vance for the sum of $1 and other valuable consideration. The deed was dated September 24th, 3 weeks before the notary who stamped it was even allowed to lift a pen. I did not know any of that yet. I only knew that on the second night in the ICU, my brother sat down next to me in the waiting room, put his hand on my knee in a way he had not done since we were children, and said, "Ellie, listen. Dad and I are talking about putting the restaurant in a trust. Just to protect it. Just while Mom is recovering. You understand?" I said I understood. I said it because I was tired, and because my mother was lying in a bed 30 feet away with a tube in her arm, and because I still wanted, at 43 years old, to believe that the men in my family were not the men I knew they were. That was my last moment of false hope. A week later, my mother was home. She could move her right hand. She could say my name. She could not yet say his. She sat in the recliner in the living room above the restaurant, looking at the photograph of her own mother on the wall, and she squeezed my hand under the blanket 3 times. Then she pointed at the floor at the restaurant below us, and she said one word, "Mine." I told her yes. I told her, of course. I told her no one was taking anything. I went back to work the following Monday. I logged into the recorder system at 8:46 a.m. I pulled the new submissions queue, the way I do every morning, the way I have done every morning for 9 years. The third file in the queue was a residential to commercial transfer at 612 Liberty Street. I knew the address before I saw it. It was the address I grew up sleeping above. The grantor was Raymond and Sophia Vance, husband and wife. The grantee was Michael Anthony Vance, single individual. The signature line for Sophia Vance was blank. There was a separate page attached, a power of attorney, dated September 22nd, signed in a hand that was not my mother's, witnessed by Daniel R. Schaefer, commission number 133492221. That commission number is the number I had personally entered into our database on November 6th, 3 weeks after my mother's stroke, when Mr. Schaefer came in with his fresh certificate from Harrisburg and stood at my counter, nervous and proud, and asked me where to sign for his oath of office. I had walked him through it myself. I had stamped his file. I had handed him his welcome packet. He could not have notarized anything in September. He did not exist as a notary in September. I sat at my desk and I felt the whole room go very quiet. I did not call my supervisor. I did not call my father. I did not call my brother. I opened a fresh case file in our internal flagging system. I attached a copy of the deed, a copy of the power of attorney, the database entry for commission 1349221, showing the November 6th issue date, and I wrote, in the calm, even font of a woman who has waited her entire life for the correct sentence, suspected backdated instrument, suspected forged power of attorney, recommend referral to district attorney, white collar unit. I clicked submit at 10:09 a.m. Then I went into the bathroom, locked the stall, sat down on the closed lid, and finally let myself cry for 30 seconds. Then I washed my face, dried my hands, and went back to my desk. If you have ever had a family member quietly try to take something from a woman who could not speak, drop a 1 in the comments. I want to know I am not alone in this. 2 days later, a quiet woman from the district attorney's office named Patricia Yoon came to my floor. She did not wear a suit. She wore a navy cardigan and carried a single legal pad. She asked me to walk her through the file. I did. She asked me if I would be willing to sign a sworn statement. I said yes. She asked me if I understood the people listed on the document were my immediate family. I told her I understood perfectly. She wrote that line down word for word. She thanked me. She left. That night, I went home to my brick house on Tilghman Street, and my husband Daniel, a high school history teacher with the kindest eyes I have ever seen on a man, met me at the door with a plate of buttered toast and a small black dog named Mabel, who pushed her cold nose into my palm. Daniel did not ask me how the day was. He had learned, in the 11 years we had been together, that when I came home with that particular silence, the question was not how, it was who. I told him all of it, the deed, the date, the notary number, my mother's hand on mine, the word, mine. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said one sentence. He said, "Your mother trusted the right child." Then he poured me a glass of water and sat with me on the porch until the street light on the corner came on. I want to tell you about that porch light. There was a porch light on the back of the restaurant when I was a girl. My mother left it on every night she was inside cleaning, so I would know from my bedroom window upstairs that she was still there, still working, still mine. The porch light on Tilghman Street is the same yellow. I notice it every night now. I do not know if Daniel chose that bulb on purpose. I have never asked. Some things you do not ask. You just keep walking toward them. In the months that followed, I did not see my father or my brother. I went to my mother's house 3 afternoons a week. I read her the Sunday paper. I rubbed lotion into the hand that had come back to her first. I taught her to say my name again, syllable by syllable. Ellie, Lee. She got it back on a Thursday in May. She squeezed my hand under the blanket and she said, "You were always the smart one. Your father is a stupid man." I laughed for the first time in 2 months. The district attorney's office worked slowly. White-collar cases always do. I did not push. I went to work. I processed deeds. I trained 2 new clerks. I planted basil in a clay pot on the kitchen windowsill, the way my mother had planted basil on the windowsill of the apartment above the restaurant when I was 7. Some nights I would catch the smell of it on my hands and feel my mother's hand under the table, squeezing once for yes. Then, in February of this year, my father had a small heart attack. Nothing fatal, enough to scare him. My brother called me from the hospital. The first words out of his mouth were, "Ellie, we need to talk about the restaurant." I drove to the hospital with my mother's old envelope of cash in my purse, the one she had pressed into my hand when I was 19. I do not know exactly why I brought it. I think I wanted to feel her hand on mine while I did what came next. My father was in a recliner in a private room, thinner than I remembered, with a thin plastic tube in his nose. Michael stood by the window in a navy blazer he had bought to look like a man with a navy blazer. He started talking before I sat down. He talked about the business. He talked about protecting Mom. He talked about how the deed had only ever been a precaution. He used the words family and lesson and real world and necessary discipline. I let him finish. Then I opened my bag. I did not pull out the cash. I pulled out a thin manila folder. Inside the folder was a certified copy of the voided deed stamped in red along the top edge, rejected for recording, case number 2024-114973. Underneath it was a printed copy of the database entry for Notary Commission, 1349221, issue date November 6th, 4 full weeks after my father had supposedly signed his name. Underneath that was a copy of the criminal referral from the recorder's office to the district attorney's white-collar unit, with my own signature at the bottom, line 9. I set the folder on the rolling tray table next to my father's water cup. I did not raise my voice. I leaned forward, the way my mother used to lean forward when she wanted a child to understand a thing for the rest of his life. And I said, "Dad, you told me when I was 12 that I was sensitive. You told me I would marry someone who would take care of me. You said the restaurant would go to Michael because he had the temperament. I want you to look at me. I am the one with the temperament. I am the one who reads the deeds. I am the one who knew the notary number was wrong before either of you walked out of that strip mall. Mom built that restaurant on a wooden crate in 1986. You tried to give it away in a parking lot in 2024. You did not give it to my brother. You handed it to me. Because I am the one who catches things like this for a living." I stood up. I left the folder on the table. I walked out of the room. I did not slam the door. I did not look at my brother. I did not need to. The dopamine in that room was not mine. It was my mother's. I had just delivered it on her behalf, 37 years late. If you have stayed with me until now, thank you. Tell me in the comments what part of the story stayed with you the most. I read every single one. On the drive home, I pulled into the small empty lot behind Vance's family kitchen. The porch light my mother had left on every night of my childhood was still working. The bulb was yellow. The brick was the same brick. I sat in the car with the engine off, and I talked to the 12-year-old girl in the upstairs bedroom who used to watch that light from her window and wonder when her father would ever say her name with pride. I told her this. I told her, "Sweetheart, you were never sensitive. You were paying attention. You were never the help. You were the witness. The men in this family did not see you. The woman in this family always did. Being unwanted by a stupid man is not the same as being unworthy of love. You are going to grow up. You are going to read every deed they think you cannot read. You are going to keep your mother's name on the door. And one day, on a Tuesday, you are going to catch a piece of paper at 9:14 in the morning, and you are going to set it down on a rolling tray table, and you are going to be the quietest person in the loudest room. That is who you become. That is who you already are. The restaurant is in my mother's name today. The case is still moving through the courts. My father does not call. My brother sends short, careful texts on holidays. My mother says my name clearly now. She squeezes my hand once under the blanket for yes. The porch light on the back of the building burns yellow every night. I leave it on for the girl I used to be,